Okay.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, I'd like to call to order the May 12th, 2021 meeting of the Edina Parks and Recreation Commission. And Janet, if you could do roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Strother?
Here.
I'm just trying to see who's all here. Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Doskach?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner Mork? Commissioner Mork? Hello? Okay. Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Willett? Commissioner Willett?
Here.
Okay. I think that's everyone that's on right now.
And me.
And Rick.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Commissioner Itis.
Yeah. Okay.
I already
I'm
checked you
gone.
off.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Before we go to item 3, I'm going to give the floor to the director, and Perry's going to put something in front of us a minute.
Thank you, Chair Itis. And before I begin, just a reminder, we're meeting virtually in compliance of the governor's executive order allowing remote meetings during the COVID-19 emergency orders. We ask you when you can to keep your cameras on for our meetings and mute your microphones when at all possible. There are several items tonight that when we do require motions, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll use the order on your agenda for ease of facilitating that. So with that, we are requesting that you approve an amended agenda this evening. We got an email out late to you tonight that we are adding a special presentation to our agenda tonight. MJ Lamone with our community engagement coordinator will be giving a brief commission member review. So we are requesting a motion and a second and then a roll call vote on approving an amended meeting agenda for this evening.
So moved. Second.
Janet, would you do the roll call again, please? Thanks.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strother?
Aye.
Commissioner Willett?
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley? Commissioner McCauley?
Aye.
Commissioner Doskach?
Aye.
Commissioner Good?
Aye.
Commissioner Mork? Commissioner Itis?
All right. Thank you.
With that, Chair Itis, we'll move into the special
Okay.
presentation for this evening. And again, I'd like to introduce MJ Lamone. She's our community engagement coordinator. She'll be going over some information related to all of our boards and commission. She's going to try to hit every boards and commission in the month of May. So she'll be giving you some updated information and on our work plan. And we'll turn it over to MJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm MJ, which everybody probably knows. I'm going to share my screen. I got the presenter. Can everybody see it? Can I get some head nods?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to give you a brief member review for new members, which I think we might have some on here. They would have received some of this information at the general orientation. And this month I am headed to every commission. So it's been I think it's been a useful review and I've been getting pretty good feedback. And then just know that this is brief. There's content that was included in the amended meeting packet, which includes the member handbook, which is the most updated version. And that's where we have more detail on our policies and procedures. So you can refer to that as well. So the 4 things I want to cover tonight is roles, communication, guiding documents, and then spend probably a little bit more time on that last item, that work plan development, because that is something that you guys are headed into doing. So just a reminder, a little bit about how we describe the roles when it comes to our city council, our commissions, you, and then also us as staff. But remember, council is that decision-making body, and they look at the big picture and decide the strategies. Us as staff, we really are the people who kind of manage those operations and the services and implement all those strategies. We are really that technical expertise. And then you as commissioners, you guys are that community perspective that is brought forward to city council. So one of the things we do at the city of Edina when we talk about our engagement, and specifically when we do public participation, is we use a spectrum. It's referred to as the International Association for Public Participation. And through that spectrum, we kind of identify to what level we're engaging the community. It's dependent on what level of influence a group or individuals can have on a decision-making matter. And so there's a bunch of different techniques that we use, which you probably have participated in at some point in time as well. These are just a whole series of techniques that we've used in the city of Edina and kind of where they fall on that spectrum from left to right. So left being inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. So as you can see on the far right side with the yellow circle actually identifies you guys as boards and commissions, and then also our advisory task forces. These groups, these advisory groups are the closest thing that we pretty much do when it comes to getting close to that right side of collaborating and empowering. And so it's a good reminder to remember as commissioners, you know, council picked you guys to bring that community perspective to any of the work plan initiatives or things that are happening in the city that they're asking for assistance on, that you guys really are a form of engagement for the city of Edina. If you guys have more questions about that, definitely feel free to reach out to me. This is a quick snapshot of what our advisory groups look like and the differences between them. The two areas that I'd like to point out on this graph is the tenure. So if they're ongoing versus temporary, our commissions are the only ongoing groups that we have. Subcommittees, working group, and task forces are always going to be temporary in nature. The other thing that's important with this is the scope of work. Commissions, you guys all have work plans, and that defines the scope and what you're actually working on, where your subcommittees are going to be based on a specific work plan item that's on a commission work plan. Same with working groups, and then task force actually has a whole separate charge that they actually work off as well. And these groups are accountable to different groups. Of course, as commissioners, you guys are accountable to council, where those other groups underneath the commissions are accountable to the commissions, and then the task force, again, a little bit separate advisory group as well. So the difference of the roles, so you have your chair, Rick, and then also have Perry as your staff liaison. Here's a little bit difference when it comes to the roles. You know, the chair works with the liaison a lot, preparing the agenda, helping lead those meetings and facilitate that discussion, supports a lot of that work plan development. So helping the commission kind of develop the work plan, encouraging the participation like Rick probably does every meeting, and any areas of conflict. Where on the flip side, Perry is also supporting that chair with making that agenda, does all that legal stuff so you guys don't have to worry about it, keeping minutes, providing you that technical expertise and that connection to city staff, resources, and also to city council. So that's a little difference on the roles. These are the ways that we communicate with city council, which you're very familiar with all these. Your meeting minutes go to them. Your work plan, of course, that was approved by city council. You have a joint work session. I think yours is coming up. Staff reports, those are written by Perry, usually includes information being passed from the commission to city council, in addition to Perry including a staff recommendation based off of his technical expertise. The last one, advisory communication, which is used not as often, typically used for a non-work plan item, something that you want to communicate to council, but they haven't approved you actually working on it. These are written by the commission or commissioners, but then they're brought to the entire commission and approved as a body. And then that information actually gets forwarded up to city council. That's like the one that always gets a little bit confusing when it comes to commission. So I just want to remind you guys that there is something, if there is a non-work plan item, but it is actually written by you as a commission to make sure it has your voice and not ours as staff. We have 3 guiding documents. We used to have 4. So this is kind of an update for you guys as a commission. We just updated our city code In addition to the member handbook that you received in the meeting packet, which we refer to as part of our policies and procedures, it outlines that more detail. The third guiding document for you is your work plan. The fourth one that doesn't show up here anymore is actually bylaws. Just about 2 weeks ago, council rescinded all of the commission bylaws. What we did is we did a review and realized that there was duplicate information in there, in the city code, and also in our policies and procedures. And so the decision was to actually move any information that was in bylaws only, which was very minimum, either to city code or into our policies and procedures, so that we could reduce the amount of guiding documents that we have. We were finding we were catching like conflicts and it was hard to keep up. So right now you guys have 3 that actually guides you for now. Okay, I'm gonna pause there real quick to see if there's any questions on those items, and then we'll jump into work plan.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
For our initiative groups, which do those fall under? Is that a subcommittee, a working group, or just so I'm clear?
It's gonna either be a subcommittee, which typically is a group of commission members only. It just can't be a quorum of commission members.
Right.
Or if you need more help or additional
It'd be a
resources,
working group. Yeah, okay.
it would be a working group when you ask for public members.
it.
Just keep in
Yep.
mind, obviously, both of those are ad hoc in nature, so there's obviously like a start, middle, end. And then once the work is done, that group is basically dissolved.
You were clear. I was not like paying it well enough attention. Don't worry. It wasn't you. It was me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great question. Anyone else? All right, let's go talk about your work plans. Here's our work plan calendar. So we are down in the bottom that has the yellow circle or square around it, the June and through August that you're coming into. So essentially June, you're gonna see the work plan 2022 work plan development showing up on your agenda, where you guys are gonna start talking about your work plan and brainstorming. In July, you're gonna see that coming together and start forming on that actual work plan template. Really by August, you really wanna just be refining and doing the finishing touches on your work plan so you can approve it as a body before it actually comes to staff to be presented to city council. Following that, once you turn it in, that's where Rick has a little bit of work that he has to do, our responsibilities. He'll come to a meeting and he'll actually present that proposed work plan to city council. We'll take those proposed ones and city staff will do a review, where staff will bring it back to council for discussion, refine it again, and then they actually approve it, and you guys start working on your 2022 work plan in January of next year. So this is kind of an annual cycle. We just keep doing the same process from year to year. Here's what the difference looks like again with chair and your staff liaison as far as responsibilities for that work plan. So Rick is going to help lead some of that work plan development and making sure it's not overloaded, and ensuring that there's somebody who's actually going to lead those initiatives. And in addition, he's also going to present that work plan to city council. Perry's going to be a huge guide for you guys, technical expertise, recommendations, and advice. So definitely listen to him. He's going to give you some good information as you're building your work plan. Going to make sure that you got clear recommendations to the city management and council, and then make sure all those fields are filled out on that work plan before it comes to us. Here's the tips. So these are a little bit about the information that's included on your work plan. So there's a title section, of course. We ask to be clear and provide detail. It's kind of challenging when we read it sometimes and we get to the end of it and we say, I'm not sure exactly what they're hoping to do. So as much detail as you can give us. So it takes a little bit of the guessing out of it. The outcome actually helps us understand the title too. Like at the end, what are you hoping to accomplish? So kind of telling us the story of like, once this initiative is done, what's going to be the end result of that? Is it a recommendation? Is it a report? Is it an event, etc.? The budget, this is a reminder that our commissions, we don't have budgets for our commissions, and commissions cannot approve funds. Those money actually exists throughout the department budgets. It's important though that if you do think you need money, that it's listed on your work plan, so that one, the department can know that you're asking for it, but two, council can understand if there is a big ask that might impact or shift something somewhere else. And so we do want you to think about if you might need budget or funding for a work plan initiative. Liaison comments, those are what we talked about earlier. Perry is gonna put those in. It shouldn't be anything that should be a surprise because he'll be there with you the entire way, giving you advice and recommendations. Target completion, be realistic. This is the one area where this impacts us the most is if you are doing something that supporting department or a department within the city is tied to, and you shift your schedule, then it kind of shifts our schedule. So a good one is like sometimes communication supporting initiatives. They put all this commission, like the events and initiatives on their work plan, getting ready for them. So if you shift, then that makes them shift that they might not be ready for. So try to be realistic on those. Last thing is partner projects. This is not a field on your work plan. This is more of like an FYI, and here's where we have the best success in through the years as we've been doing cross commission work plan items. It's definitely great to work with other commissions. What we find is the best, and you might even have one this year. I don't know, Perry, if there's something that they're working on together. That's okay. If you think you're going to, or you're going to potentially be asked, what is the best design is to have a lead commission and then have a supporting commission. And essentially how that works is if you're a lead commission, basically leading the work and deciding what you're going to do, and then also running that content, usually through that supporting commission for a review and comment, coming back to the lead commission, who ultimately brings it up to city council. So if you run into something like this, Perry can help you guys lead through the suggestion of how these actually work the best. So I think that brings us to an end. If you guys have any questions about work plan development, you will start next month. And it doesn't have to end now. Perry has a lot of information. You guys check with him. If anything comes up after this, I'm always available if you need to reach out, or Perry knows how to find me. But I really appreciate you guys letting me come to your meeting and giving you a quick review. Hopefully you remember a lot of it.
MJ, I've got a couple of quick questions, unless any other of the members do, but just. Any other commissioners had any questions? MJ, just one, we talked about it this afternoon about removing an initiative or parking lot initiative, so addressing that one. And the second one is, and you can think about it as I talk, but the commission is meeting with the city council next Tuesday in joint session. Any advice that you have for them for that meeting? It's a brief half hour.
Yeah.
We're no longer sitting around the same room where it's not as casual. You're going to see a lot of boxes on the screen. So maybe any advice that the other commissions have had leading up to today?
Yeah, ideally it wouldn't be virtual, first of all. But so what the main objective of that meeting is so that council can have a check-in point with you on the progress of your 2021 work plan. And so they're looking to find out where are you guys at. So at a minimum, Perry probably supported you guys on getting those progress report sections filled out. My best advice is on the things that seem like they can go quickly, move through those quickly to allow there might be extra time for discussion, and preparing for if there are any asks from council, be prepared to present that, like, this is what we're looking for, be more clear about if you have something that you want to actually receive back from them. Otherwise, it's really just an update. So then if you don't ask for anything, they're pretty much probably just going to be receiving information from you. And because it's virtual, if less people can talk, that saves on time moving from person to person.
Okay. And then we have heard that, maybe our next agenda item tonight, we're going to get in depth on the existing work plan about possibly putting one like back on a parking lot or taking a pause on it. I think we're going to be discussing that next. Any advice on that, or technical pieces that we wanted to go through?
Yep. So it's great that actually the work session's coming up, because that's a really good time just to update council on that item. It sounds like it might just be a pause type of thing. Again, they'll read it, and we can always keep that as historical as part of the record so we remember, but just letting them know the reasons why you guys think that you're going to put a pause on an initiative. They approve those work plans, and for the most part, commissions are coming up with them every once in a while. They're adding something that they think is a priority. But they just want to know if something's not completed, just why it wasn't completed. And we're trying to track that a little bit more from year to year. Does that help, Perry? Okay, and you guys are second or first?
They'll be second next Tuesday.
Okay, so the advice for that is you guys, and maybe you're gonna talk about it, Perry, later. Come on, okay, so you guys still join the meeting at the beginning of the time, even though it's gonna be a little bit later. As the commissioners of the Parks and Recreation, you can stay off camera until it's actually your turn to come on to the meeting. Some of the Arts and Culture Commission members prior to you probably will drop off right after they're done. But that will help with the pictures on the screen if you guys keep your cameras off for the first half. Any questions?
We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth on the next agenda item, but any advice is always beneficial. It's been a while since we've actually done this in practice. Last year was just a COVID update because of the timing of it, and otherwise it's been 2 years since we've actually been doing it. So
yeah, good luck. Okay, you guys have a great night. Thank you for letting me pop in for a little bit.
Yep. Thanks, MJ.
Thank you, MJ. Thank you.
Questions.
Chair, well, good transition. We can jump into the next agenda item if you're ready, Chair.
Okay, let's do item 4, the work plan updates. Perry, I'll just have each lead kind of tell us the progress. And then should we, at the end, kind of summarize how we want to do next week in terms of order of initiative and certainly time allotted?
I think that'd be appropriate. Yeah, we could go through an update. So I think 2 things is if you wanted to update any progress this evening on the work plan, we've kind of got that progress Q1. I can still make amendments to that tonight. I'll attach it to the council's packet tomorrow. So this is actually perfect time if you want to put the most up-to-date progress in there. I could still do that and edit that. And then I think, just any updates tonight, how we want to use the time next Tuesday to be the most efficient would be great. As I was thinking too, as part of that discussion, you'll be giving them an update. And then over the next 3 months, you'll have time to talk about next year's work plan. Maybe one of those questions to the council eventually then will be is what are their thoughts on 22 as well, right? So kind of mirroring up the work you're doing now, which has a lot of impact on where we're heading in the next phase. So if you wanted to do that, I can give a brief one on initiative 1 because it's still in staff's corner.
Sure.
And it's actually taken a little bit of a turn on us because we've kind of had to pause on the community engagement piece of that. You'll see in June, at the first council meeting in June, Heidi Lee, the race and equity coordinator, and the READ engagement team, I don't know if you've heard around the Metro, there's been a tremendous push of a priority of joining the Just Deeds project. So that right now has consumed a lot of time for staff on that, on our race and equity action team, which Parks and Rec has 2 members on, a number of other people involved, as well as leading that. So in the first meeting in June, I believe the council is going to get an update on that, on the Just Deeds project, where that's at. In addition, if that goes forward, one of the things that our staff has been working on right now is working through the mapping prejudice database on the Just Deeds format. And Tom Swenson's been helping with a small work group on that. We've actually identified around, they have identified around 53 parcels that are within our park system that still hold racial covenants on them. And if you know about the racial covenants, those were outlawed, deemed unenforceable, but however, they still reside on deeds. So as the city looks to join the Just Deeds project for residents to take action on their own personal, privately held deeds, we believe we have about 53 parcels that have them in our park system. So that'll be a secondary piece of taking action on the publicly held property that the city enforces to remove those covenants on those park systems. One of the parcels we have found is that has a possible restriction. They're still doing some deed research on is the Yancey Park, recently named Garden. So that would be a very important one for us to take action on from the first phase. So while this is still a priority, it's the popularity and the quick reaction that they're doing on the Just Deeds project has kind of overshadowed this a little bit. So we've not forgotten, but this is a huge first step on a different race and equity matter that is going to be coming before the council. So we'll still continue to work on this, but this one kind of really jumped the line over the last probably a month to 6 weeks on this. You'll see more information about that as it heads to the council, but I want to be aware we have found about 53, Tom, I think, PID numbers within our park system that we believe have that. The city's attorney's office is providing free legal research for us to identify those. And then we want the council to go through a process then to remove those for us.
Are those spread throughout the community, or those parcels, or throughout? Oh,
Yeah,
all four quadrants have them. Sorry to jump in, Barry.
yeah.
There's actually some interesting research you can do. I think the University of Minnesota did a project called Mapping Prejudice, and you can go in and you can look to see where they believe those potential deeds are just from the research they've done. So they've mapped it out, kind of a mapping of an area of where those all are located through Edina. And then you can actually, I believe, enter your own address to see if it has the potential that one would be on there as well. So a lot of land use attorneys are offering a lot of pro bono work on this. And what the aspect is now is trying to manage those requests of getting those in and how to process those and what the next steps are. Because it's one thing to just to go through and strike the covenant, but also the educational piece of how that was impacted, how it was put into place, what the next steps are, what other forms of discrimination were followed up by that either before or after. It's just the history that we've kind of gone through from redlining to the covenants to what may be next. So it's a really fascinating piece, and obviously more to come on that community wide. So I wanted to identify that. We are also looking at the publicly held property as well.
So Perry, and Tom, just a question: how did the property become public? How did these parcels get put into the public park system?
Yeah, at one time they were all publicly held. So either through acquisition, donation, it might be tax forfeiture, it might have been through development where a larger parcel was broken into smaller, and then the city property was given as park under park dedication. That was always either cash or land. And when cities were developing, the land was the most important, was to dedicate parks. So those covenants stayed on the deed as it was either developed, purchased, acquired from when that was privately held. Most likely. Tom's also done a lot of look on this as well.
Well, I did look at the map, and it's I don't know, it's kind of makes you nauseous to look at it and see these clumps all around town. I'd suggest everybody take a look at it. It's sobering.
Perry, is there a time horizon that they'd like to have these corrected or fixed? Or
I believe
I'm unclear about, what's, what's going to happen here.
Yeah, the first meeting in June, and I apologize I don't have the exact date, but we'll keep you informed on that. This is kind of speeding up. Heidi Lee and the REIT, the Race Equity and Advancement Team, we call it the REIT team, is going to be seeking authorization from the City Council to join the Just Deeds project. And then they're going to map out a process of where homeowners can go through, submit their properties, and get this legal service to rescind those covenants. I think from us, obviously, even though they're unenforceable and it's city-held property, which wouldn't be transferred to another homeowner, hopefully, we wouldn't be selling parkland. But it is kind of recognizing that those are there and then taking action on them. So we'd like to do that sooner than later. We'd like to do it at the same time that the council takes action, if they do so, to join the Just Deeds project. And to recognize that, and especially since we've gone through a lot of the work, and this commission has as well, when they work with the Human Rights and Relations Commission to identify a park to name after the first African-American family, the Yancey family. And now through mapping prejudice, we realize there's a racial covenant on that property. So for us to strike that, even though it's ceremonial, I think it's a huge statement to take action on sooner than later. I think we'd like to do that obviously in June or this summer, whenever this occurs.
And this is Julie. I would say I think that is right, and it makes sense to prioritize that and putting a slight pause on the project here in item number 1. But I will say I just got done reading The Color of Law, which is a book that starts with racial covenants, but moves through sort of how they then, once they were unenforceable, they still had an impact. And then there are other ways that our legal system and government has continued to further segregation. But I do think that getting back to the agenda item is important because, as you said, it's important to get rid of the symbolic unenforceable covenant, but the impacts of it were felt beyond the time that they could be enforced. And so, like, turning back to looking at what we're doing to make our community accessible and welcoming to all, I feel like is really important.
I completely agree. One of the things that I've always mentioned is it's important to learn. It's important to take action on your history. It's important to do those things. We also need to be aware of any policy we're creating unintentionally today. That I've always said that I don't want someone looking back and say, what was Perry doing 20 years ago when they decided this, because we had some implicit bias on something we were providing. So I think that's truly important as well, as to balance that out, is that we're not starting something today that people will look back on decades down the line and say, I can't believe they did that. The same way we look back at this and say, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah, Julie, that's a really good point, because as I was listening to the size of the potential effort of 53 parcels plus everything else that's going on to the city, my mind immediately went to, well, we're not going to make any progress on initiative 1. And I think you raise a really good point that unless we are intentional about keeping that at the forefront somehow, it will far too easily kind of slip behind this other, obviously good, important work, but we'll miss the opportunity to make an impact on what's happening today. And I really like that point. It was a good one.
Barry, do you have any other comments, or?
Again, not on initiative 1, but I'll just mention on the Just Deeds, the renouncing racial covenants. There is on edinamn.gov, there is a webpage on renouncing those racial covenants and just what that is, and how people can be kept informed. So if you just go to the city's website, in the search bar, put in Just Deeds, the top search bar should be renouncing racial covenants. You can find a lot more information there as well. And I probably didn't, in my description, did do it exact accuracy and the justice that it needs for what's on the page. So if you want to read more about it, I would strongly recommend that you check that out.
Thank you.
You want me to jump into number 2?
Yes.
Okay. So number 2, at a high level, we were going to try to present some information about the parks to 6 different community groups. I believe I mentioned last month, or maybe the month before, that we decided to take a different approach because of COVID, that we will probably not be getting having lots of community events, and maybe we're wrong. But so we decided to try an online approach. So there is called Edina Talks, I believe it is, online, that is currently being utilized already through the city. So we have taken a stab at high level. We could really probably make 10 different buckets, but if we just take a high level of 4 different buckets to first focus on, and they'll probably branch off into more information. So those 4 buckets are the parks. So just high level information of the parks. Did you know that we have this many parks and where they're all at, and some fun facts there. The second one is around the recreation programs. The third is around the facilities, as well as kind of some high level information around the business aspect of those entities. And then the last one is around funding, which is always a fun topic. And I think that kind of also branches into another initiative here too, but just some high level, how do we educate on the funding, let alone also ask for any help on the funding as well. And I think really the biggest thing we want to do is educate people on what the parks are, and that we have a lot of trees, but none of them are a money tree. So making sure that we can help people understand that what is realistic to expect from the parks, as well as hopefully share something that they didn't know about the parks before. So kind of at a high level, those are our first 4 buckets of work. The next step was to basically try to figure out how we want to make them into an online presentation. So we'll have more information on that, but that's kind of our buckets that we've identified. Any questions?
Very good.
I'll just add, you did great, Corin. It's called Town Talks. And if you want to go on the Better Together site, you can kind of see a sample of the format that has been used in the past. They've done residential recycling, public safety had a town talk. So there's been a number of them in the past. If you kind of want to just quick look to see like what it looks like, what the sample is. Corin's exactly right. We kind of thought, the group thought as well about how this could continue engagement with a virtual. There's Q&A, there's time for follow-up. So it kind of lives for people that aren't quite captured in one meeting.
Yeah, Corin, I haven't, what's the length usually of, what do we talk about? I can't remember the length of the town talk. Is that 45 minutes or what do you?
No, I think we said less because we wanted to have some time in there for Q&A. I believe we had to keep it to 20.
Okay.
And it'll be a different kind of Q&A than before. And we also said it may just be true questions versus feedback, and we'll take your feedback. We may not have an answer for your question, like when they're asking like, how come? And
Right.
If we're on the first topic and they want to jump to the why don't we have money trees, then that'll be coming up next. So I think it's just a high level outline is the kind of the structure we have right now. And I sent you everything earlier too. Anything else?
It's good because it's something that hasn't been done before. So
There you go.
be great. Right.
And people can watch it, for years to come.
Whenever.
Right.
Also.
Maybe by then there'll be a money tree.
That's Eileen's problem.
Yeah, number 3 is about alternative funding. We met about 2 weeks ago, and we will be looking at a menu of options for funding park projects. Some are philanthropic, various grants, the sales tax proposal, restricted levies. So there's a menu of options, and the team split these up for research purposes. And we'll be reaching out to staff for information as it pertains to each category where necessary. And we will also, once we do some research, determine which parks can utilize which funding sources, because some of our parks are regional, some are not. So there's different options for those. So this decision making will be based on the research that we do. We hope to have final recommendations for the city council by the September meeting, which will be in time for the city budget process. But it's, you know, we've got to break down the projects that we have and, you know, into different categories and what we can tackle and just get moving on some of them in the future. We have to start moving on some of them. Any questions?
I have one. Is it, and going back to Corin's work, the funding part, yeah, since I'm on that one and on yours, can I use some of the high level things that you're going to talk about as kind of a tease in initiative 2?
I mean, I don't see why not, except my concern would be that people, we could get into a situation where people just like, well, oh, see, they've got alternative funding. None of these are going to be in stone. So, you know, we don't need to do this or that because they can do this or that when we don't know really what we can do. So maybe once we nail them down, if that's what you mean, like as we go forward from the council approving our funding initiatives, then put in the communications, yes. But I'm not sure if we should put them in before we.
So in number 2, we could talk about the source of monies today,
Yeah, and the lack,
Right.
you know,
Lack
right,
of, yes, Cory.
the
Yes.
lack of
Right.
funds, no money
right,
tree.
Yeah.
right.
I mean, literally, I hear people say on a regular basis, doesn't Edina have a money tree? And I think that we should make sure we talk about the tree that's not existing.
Right. Right.
And even in Arden Park.
So
I
yeah,
guess I know.
yeah,
Right.
Rick, I think you can, as we talk to, once we get a, you know, some more guidance as to what we can and
Right.
cannot do, it could go into the communications piece.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about, you know, not elaborating some of the talking points, but perhaps using some of the verbiage, you know, when we talk about a menu of opportunities for, you know, I just, you know, I think the communication is going to be our first kind of step inside the door. And I'm just thinking that we can tell them how things actually happen. I mean, like Corin just said, people just think that, you know, Tom sends a crew down the street and just sweeps it up, you know, at the end of the week or something. And, you know, versus here's the actuality, you know, like Braemar, you know, the misconception we talked the other day, the golf course doesn't get any tax money. You know, so I mean, people presume that, oh, my taxes are going up because they built that new golf course. That's just not true. So I think, you know, in the communication part, we want to eliminate some of that misinformation and just present pure facts. Here's how things, you know, fees go to such and such. Here's what the enterprises get. You know, that type of thing, and then get into the dream road, so to speak, the menu, the specific menu items, and say these are things that we'd strongly are thinking about and therefore recommending that you consider.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine we're not going to go out and do the communications piece until we have kind of direction, right, as to what we can and cannot do. I mean, or are you planning on doing that sooner?
That's what I'm thinking, is just, you know, I think for Corin's group is to just be factual. You know, here's how things, you know, actually take place.
Yes.
You know, not
Totally
not get into the, yeah, not get into the menu matrix and, you know, down the left side and go over to the right to see how we think this is going to be taken
Right.
care of.
Totally agree.
I mean, yeah, we couldn't. I don't feel comfortable mentioning philanthropic work, you know, in the communication part.
Right.
Although we're highly thinking about it, we're certainly not going to think about referendum in the communication part, but we're certainly going to probably give it to them in initiative 3, though.
Yes.
This is kind of the, yeah. So, okay, I understand. Any other questions for Eileen a minute, or if not, Matt, and if you want to talk about Initiative 4, what you're thinking, I know you've talked to Perry perhaps on it, or it was kind of hinted at earlier tonight.
Right, so for Initiative 4, again, we appreciate the director previously providing guidance as to how that ties into the strategic plan and goal 2 and strategy 2.2 and the more specifically tactic 2.2.1. And so our subcommittee, I got it right? Our subcommittee met last week and had a discussion on this. And I think the consensus we came to on that particular thing is we batted about a number of ideas, right? And how it ties into various existing information, such as the level of service that's in the strategic plan, is that we want to ensure that what we do actually has an impact, right? In the sense of if we're going to give instruction on underutilized amenities or replacing them with more productive amenities, we want to understand whether there's information beyond what's in the strategic plan and other information, perhaps the cities, the parks department's looking at that to inform themselves on either prioritization of projects, right, on our list, or how it all relates to level of service. So before we, I think, get into this idea of categorizing things even further, Director, it might be useful for me to have a conversation with either you or somebody on staff just to kind of nail down exactly how we can give something to, to the Parks Department that actually is of value. And we're still not entirely clear we're at a point where we know that we can do that. In other words, something where we tell you there's an underutilized amenity or replaced with a good, another amenity where there's actually going to be, a realistic chance of that having some impact in the short term. And that may again be related to the prioritization of the list of projects that the city has in the queue, right? Related to parks. So anyway, that's sort of where we're at.
So Matt, yeah, absolutely, we can get together and discuss that.
Okay.
Are you thinking you still want to keep this on as initiative, or is the feedback to hit pause for a while?
I don't know if it's necessary. Well, I think it's until we get clarity, right? So, I mean, some of the ideas we thought about, well, right, is it about, population density changes? Is it about additional demographic changes? Is it about XYZ? What factors do we actually know what the utilization of these places, these parks are? Do we have some sense for that, right? Or, are we going to do some monitoring, or is there something we would need to do that would actually provide factual information that helps inform that decision, that helps you then prioritize where projects fit in the queue? I just don't think we have enough information just reading, and I think a lot of it already exists, right? And we also don't want to recreate work, right? If the work exists, use the work that exists, like level of service may be sufficient for that, right? I don't know the answer. So I want to have a further conversation before I take our subcommittee into more work on coming up with the categorizations.
Hey, Perry,
that sounds good.
When I was obviously part of this group, and when I think about what we're doing on number 3 and, working towards coming up with some alternative or ways of funding the projects in the parks, to me, that takes priority over coming up with more projects. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't just strike this from the work, ask the council to strike this from the work list and have that group help out with the alternative funding, because it's, we'd be on the other group, we'd be chasing something that we can't do anything about. So that's just my thought on it.
I think the first step is why don't we get together and then discuss it in greater detail.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. We'll use Rick's office at the golf course.
That's right.
At the 18th green.
And I think I've got Perry, if whether it's the whole group or just myself, I think I've got a fair assessment of the opinions of the remainder of the subcommittee, right? So you and I can do a one-on-one if that works best.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that before we strike. Mm-hmm.
Ready for number 5?
Okay.
Initiative number 5, establish a foundational set of benchmarks for our parks and operations that allow us to see, measure, communicate how we're doing both now and into the future. So as a team, we have a draft baseline of 9 proposed benchmarks. They're not yet set in stone, so we could modify, add, or drop if we felt we needed to. But just to give you a high level of what those 9 are, the first is a base we've had for quite some time. That's 15% of Edina land dedicated to park and green space. The second is every Edina resident within 1 mile walk of a park. The third is park acreage per resident, and that's a standard measure that's used across other parks. Fourth is operational cost recovery of our enterprise facilities. Fifth is number of outdoor ice sheets. Sixth is trail miles for biking, running, and walking. Seventh is number of rectangular athletic fields. 8 is capital spending and funding sources. And number 9 is annual expenditures on planning and development, which gives us a bit of a sense of execution and future focus. So those would be our 9 proposed benchmarks. We have some internal metrics that we use, for example, on our operating cost recovery for our enterprise facilities. And some of these others, we can actually reach out to national parks standards and take a look at what their benchmark level is and compare how we're doing in Edina to park and rec associations of other cities of similar size. So that's the proposed draft. And Perry and Rick, I'll send you a recap document of those 9 after our meeting tonight, so you can use it in either the quarterly recap or next week if we so choose.
Greg, I just had a quick question. At one point, we had talked about, looked at those fields of kind of looking at them 2 ways. One was city provided and the other one was community provided, including the schools. And is that something we still wanted to do? And is that an exercise some of our student members could assist with, or are we thinking city only?
It's a good question, Perry. I think we certainly do want to weave that into a kind of initiative item number 2, which is a communication piece that we recognize we have the city facilities and the school facilities. I don't know enough of the detail of kind of the national benchmarking, but my assumption would be that those are probably benchmarking city assets rather than kind of lumping school assets in with it. So if we wanted to try to compare it on a national number, then we might find ourselves in a little bit of trouble there.
Greg, I have one question. I have one question. Benchmarking, and I kind of think about the future, and I look at the change in density in the Southdale area with everything that's going up. The guitar store and all those, if there's more development on France, and will our benchmarks be reevaluated or more homework done? Or I'm just and I just asked that because as you know, I did a little thing at 7500 York, and their question and concern is how do I get to Roslyn? And now 3 years later, I look at, I don't know, another 1,000 people that live within a square mile. And I just, I wonder how this is all going to work its way through just, 5 years from now. Will our benchmarking or our results differ substantially again versus our benchmark?
Yeah, it's a good question, fair question. I think a couple things, Rick. One, I think benchmarking is always open to review, whether you do that on an annual basis or every few years, to assess, are we still measuring the right things from both a near-term operational perspective and a long-term strategic perspective. The second, another piece of the initial work we did on this, kind of feeding from last year's initiative, that haven't seen how we fit this into a benchmark, but I do think it's something that we started to discuss a bit at the end of last year, and that's to address that park services approach, right? And to kind of look at our city in the different quadrants and understand what types of services, what types of assets do we have in each quadrant, and if we look forward, how well does that still fit what we think the future needs of that quadrant would be? I think that's a little bit different question than just benchmarking, but I do think that's still a body of work that we should figure out how we want to crack that.
Right. And that's, thank you. It just, we just seem to be shifting to that southeast quadrant.
Yep.
Much more. I mean, I can remember having lived here for 45 years. It just seems like half of our population now lives in 1/4 or
Yep.
less than 1/4 the space.
And it'll probably take a different view of how we service them with parks and recreation than the standard green space and everything else, right?
Right.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thanks for all
Yep.
your work, you guys. Yep. Any other questions or comments by anybody else?
Well, Chair, I'll capture
yeah,
some of
go
these
ahead.
updates and include them on the progress report, as Q1. And then that'll be the freshest feedback for the packet that will go out this weekend for that. So that's the most updated information then that the council will review.
So the mechanical part of next Tuesday, is it your intent, our intent to go down these numerically, 1 through 5, or what's the expectation of the council when they see these 5 things in front of them?
I think that's up to your discretion. They'll probably read them in numerical order. Whether you want to move around or reprioritize or how you want to provide that update is up to you. How you want to use, you got about a half hour. You're going to go second, so if you go a little bit longer, there won't be a hard cutoff, but I'm sure they'll have a full agenda at 7 o'clock, and they need to transition meetings in between there. So,
right, in my past experience with these, right, you could get bogged down in the details
Yeah.
of 1 or 2, so we better put whatever we think is at the top of the list of things we want to identify
Right.
at the
Yeah,
top
I
of the
agree.
list.
Yeah. Well, just for me personally, I certainly, I think 2 is important because it's something that it's just something I think the park board's excited about doing. I think getting out, that's our link between us, our group, and the rest of the community. I think number 3 is highly important because, at some point in time, $750,000 of stipend money a year isn't going to handle our problems. And I think both 2 and 3, in my estimate, or in my estimation, is initiatives that are going to have some work next year, the year after. These things aren't going to be resolved or taken care of. So I think, again, in my opinion, I think we need to allocate a substantial amount of that time to those 2. Now, the depth we'll have to, decide amongst, our individual groups. But I think, in all fairness to everybody on the park board, I think we should mention all 5 of them because that's where we're spending our time. And I think, we may feel individually that 1 or more of them are more important, but they're all important to us as a group. So I think all 5 of them need to be mentioned. I don't know, Perry, you can give us some insight about, you're there that night, but you don't speak at all.
The meeting between the commission and the council. I will absolutely be there to support you however you need me to, but if you need me to fill in, answer questions, provide clarity,
so
staff will do whatever we can, but we will not have a formal presentation role that evening.
Yeah. I mean, I should ask, Corin and Eileen, since I brought up number 2 and 3, if they think that that's the way we should go to emphasize those 2, or anybody else should, for that matter of fact, give a thoughts.
Well, I'm okay with it, but we need to decide because if we're going to give more time to those 2, because it's going to be questions, then it needs to be more of than a 30,000 foot level discussion. In my opinion. And I'm not sure we're ready for that yet, but I mean, I could see those going first, and then seeing what flushes out, with the other three. You know, if they take up a lot of time.
I mean, 4 is the easiest to put last, mine, right? Because, well, it's important, quote important, we still have an open question on it, right? And so there's not gonna be a lot of direction we can give until the gating
Right.
item on that one's done. So I put that at the bottom. If we get to it, we get to it. I won't be offended.
Okay.
What you're saying is we don't need to meet yet tonight. After this meeting.
I haven't penciled in, I was putting, you're on my calendar. Doug, you haven't seen the calendar invite yet from me?
So
Let's wrap this up around 8:30. I got an 8:45 with you.
It doesn't have the date and time on it, Matt.
Right. That's right, Eileen.
Well, I mean, we have, let's say 25 minutes. That's only 5 each. So if 2 of them don't get any, I mean, it's still, I hear Eileen, I hear you concerned, but it doesn't take very much to fill 5 or 6 minutes, does it? Or,
Well, what I said tonight took a minute.
well, as staff, I'll just give you this advice. My rule of thumb on things is always, if it's been longer than 30 days, you need to fully remind elected officials, because they have a lot on their plate from a variety of different areas. There's a lot of inputs headed their way. So don't underestimate that your update should be from scratch, should be as if they're first hearing it. So as you're presenting it, don't assume that they've followed along, they've had time to review, because they get a lot of information thrown at them.
Yeah, in the past, when I was on the health commission, same thing. They'd be like, remind me what this is about. And I had to go through what something was about. So you might get that for sure. So it's better to head it off, like to have a little, my view, right? Have a little preface as to what each thing is about. So.
And on that, though, things that are on the front of mind of council, right? It sounds like what is delaying or sort of putting aside project 1 is currently front of council. So I mean, I'm happy to give the update on that, but it does seem like that one, because it's sitting with staff right now, and because the work that's delaying it is actively being discussed with council right now. That one seems like, I just advocated that one is incredibly important and we shouldn't lose track of it, but it also seems like that one doesn't need to be at the top of the list for discussing with the council, because they understand, my read was that they understand why it's being delayed.
So are you battling Matt for last place?
no, I just gave Julie 4th.
Perfect.
And the default goes to Greg to get in the middle.
Act as the bridge between the two bookends.
Yes. My thing is, Corin, if you want to go first, is that okay? I think that's, to me, the communication is I want to use fun, but it's something that just is excitable, I think. You know, where the park board now has this as one of their initiatives to reconnect or relink with the community as a whole. And, you know, as we've talked in a couple small meetings, you know, here's an opportunity that is in front of us to really bring that to the forefront, I think.
Chair, I believe Corin might have had some tech issues. She
Yep, she's
she might
not.
have dropped off the call here.
Yep, she dropped off, and I keep watching attendee to see if she's coming back on, because that's how she usually starts. So I'm keeping an eye on it, but she's not in.
Normal Zoom protocol means she accepts.
Right.
That's right. She got first. Okay, and that leaves you.
I'm texting her now, Greg, to let her know you volunteered her.
We're all behind her, literally and figuratively.
So that'll be, we'll do Corin will go first and Eileen will go second, and Greg can go third, and Julie can do fourth, and Matt will do fifth. Any other things that we should be made aware of, Gary?
So just as a reminder, we'll put in your work plan. I'll also attach the Parks, Open Space, and Natural Resources chapter of the comprehensive guide plan. So as the council's reviewing it, they'll see your work plan, the progress that's on there, and then also see the comprehensive guide plan chapter. So I think it's always important to kind of tie those two together when you're talking. So those will be in the packet. As you said, just from a logistics or technical standpoint, you commissioners will get an invitation from Jennifer Garsky. She's in administration. She will be inviting you to the WebEx meeting for that evening. As MJ indicated, try to join early, and then you can shut your camera and your microphone off until we get ready to go. So the Arts and Culture Commission will go at 5:30. They'll have a half hour, and then it'll be the Parks Commission. Then council will have a break, then they'll jump into the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. So that's the biggest thing, is you'll see a lot of boxes on the call on Tuesday. So we'll just kind of try to work through those logistics of that.
Perry, how do you spell Jennifer's last name?
G-A-R-S-K-E, Jennifer Garsky. And once she sends things out, I'll just shoot you all an email that says it should be in your inbox somewhere.
Okay. Anything else, Gary?
Nothing on our end.
Okay. We can go to item 5, member comments, if any.
Rick, this is Greg. I just have one that really hit me. I was jotting down some notes, just listening to MJ and thinking about our 2022 work plan. And Perry, I know you'll give us some more guidance and direction on that, but we've struggled in the past, and I know a couple of our initiative teams have recognized this again this year, but we've struggled in the past of feeling like we really have been good at getting some tight work plan items that are meaningful. And so listening to MJ, I started to just think through how potentially what might be one framework to think about how we develop work plan items. And so I just had 3 thoughts I'd toss out for us to think about as we go into it. One is, I liked her comment around the role of a commission is to bring the voice of the community. And so if we really kind of put that hat on and think about our work plan, what are we hearing from the community, and how are we bringing that voice of the community to our work plan, if we really own the work plan? The second, and this is Perry as our liaison, you can really help us as well, is if desired, we really want to support the Park and Rec Department priorities. And so if there are 2 or 3 things that are just daggone tough challenges as a department for you to get over, how do we help? And how do we maybe weave one of those or 2 of those into a work plan? And then the third is just at a high level, how do we drive strategic initiatives? And so in my mind, those might be 3 questions that we bring into our 2022 work planning thoughts and discussions that I just was thinking about as MJ was giving her presentation. That's all I've got to say for this evening, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else with comments, please? Hearing none, we'll move to item 6. Perry, if you'd like to take a turn.
Thank you, Chair. We'll breeze through 6 here quick, just of council updates. Just recognition, if you haven't seen the Sun Current, the front page is our City Forester Luther Overholt. April 30th was Arbor Day. He does a fantastic job on some of these events. So not only Arbor Day planting, but he also, the last 2 years, because Arbor Day has been so restricted due to guidance and gathering limitations, rather than planting a lot of seedling trees where he needed a lot of volunteers in one area, which we couldn't gather, he put together a program to give out those tree seedlings. So once again, just to kind of recognize Luther, his work and all the efforts that he goes through results in a proclamation of Arbor Day. But Tom's staff does a tremendous job in supporting that. If you don't mind, I'll jump right into the informational items that are in your packet and just highlight a few of those. If you have driven by, the Braemar Sports Dome was taken down just a couple of weekends ago. As you recall, we did leave that up. There were some COVID implications on gathering to take that down, what it might have been used for, those types of aspects last year that were a lot of unknowns. However, it is down this year, and we'll be looking forward to a normal schedule there as well for events. So our second golf course is now open. Centennial Lakes, the putting course has opened for the season, along with the paddle boat rentals. So that is now online. Online as in active, not online as in electronic. So just to clarify. Tom and his staff have done a great effort on the community garden. If you recall, that was closed last year to a regional sewer interceptor project that was underneath. So that garden has been completely redone. In addition to some nice barriers to do the separated for each plot. But Tom and his staff worked with the organics recycling coordinator, and the end result of organics is to generate compost, and that compost was collected and distributed. I think a couple of bags for each garden plot were given out to each of the renters to amend the soil in their for their growing plot. In addition, some of the tree people got compost as well. So while it's not a park and recreation project, the cell phone tower that is expanding at Highlands Park, the contractor is anticipated to be done by the end of the month. The one piece of that does relate to us is we're kind of overseeing and make sure they follow the plans that the city council approved, but it also expands the hockey lighting. That'll change. The new lights will be on the new cell phone tower that's co-located in Highlands Park. Hopefully all of our restrooms and drinking fountains should be open or opening soon throughout the park system. Those were very limited last summer, as well as we did not open any drinking fountains throughout the pandemic. Those will be open this year, or this summer. Last meeting, we mentioned that Tom Shirley had retired as the general manager of Centennial Lakes Park. We wanted to announce, we announced it internally. Was it yesterday? I'm trying to get my days mixed up. Is it yesterday, Tracy? Like 6 weeks ago, we announced. But yesterday we announced internally to our department in the city that we've selected a new general manager for Centennial Lakes Park, and it's Tiffany Bushland. So we did a wide open process. Throughout, we had a number of amazing, talented, creative individuals, and Tiffany has been selected as next general manager. That creates another vacancy, which we shall fill. So we'll be working on a transition plan to do that. So we're most excited. In addition, we hope to kind of finalize as well how the new COVID-19 guidance, the changes in the guidance is going to impact our operations. We're happy to say we will have a most normal summer. However, we need to work through what some of those logistics are. I know this afternoon there was an aquatics call, there was a ice arena call. I think youth sports guidance has changed a little bit. So we anticipate, from from May 7th now to May 28th, there'll be changes. May 28th and beyond, there'll be changes. And eventually, when masking mandates end July 1st or sooner with the vaccine percentage. So we'll put more information out that soon, but we anticipate that all of our enterprises will be open this summer. That includes the aquatic center. That was always our plan. We've always kind of said we won't know what it looks like till we get the guidance. Now we're starting to get that guidance, and we'll have some clarity on that in the near future with the aquatic center, the ice arena, kind of all of our operations going forward, what our youth programming exactly will look like. So we'll be pushing that out soon.
I had a question. Did the demand, given it was down for a year, did the demand for the community gardens exceed the supply again? Because I know it had in the past.
It does every year.
The only reason, partly I asked because I was actually involved in the Community Health Commission when that went through originally in 2013. So I'm glad to hear it's doing well.
I don't know how long the wait list is, but I know it fills up.
Mary, I have one question. In the various neighborhoods, the little ponds, and I'm thinking of one at the corner of Cahill and Dewey. There's a little pond that's in that corner. It's not in a park, but it's just, it's in, when those get full of trash and, garbage and whatever, is the street department, who takes care of that, the cleaning of those, the cleansing? Because now it's starting to become more apparent. People are out, you walk by them, there's plastic bottles, cans, whatever. Is that the Parks Department that takes care of that, or?
Typically it would be the utility department, but I'll turn it over to Tom. His instrumental knowledge of the public works operation.
Yeah.
So any of the functioning of the waterways for stormwater would be the utilities department. General garbage pickup ends up kind of being an all staff process throughout the year, and a lot of volunteers also.
Okay.
We have every week we have probably 20 to 30 volunteers offering to pick up in various parks if it's something they can reach from shore. So
Get out there, Rick.
Yeah, no, I just, there's a little corner pocket there on Dewey, and it's just, you can't go down in there because it's banked, but it just accumulates stuff. Either people toss it in there and you think, wow, it's unsightly after a while. And I didn't know if it was whose responsibility it was for kind of getting a scoop in there. But
Maybe
anyway.
we could put up a sign saying, please do not deposit your trash here.
Please don't do that, do you throw this stuff in your living room?
Sadly, it's sounding like it's functioning as designed, because a lot of those systems are designed as catch-alls to be cleaned out, and then various elevations will keep them in certain areas so they don't keep going downstream.
Yeah. What's the another question? Smoking, that's generally not allowed in our parks, right?
We have a tobacco-free park system.
Okay.
It's not in the ordinance.
Okay.
So it's, or is it an ordinance, Tom?
I believe it might be an ordinance because it's posted as an official rule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% positive though. I can find out and get back to you, Rick.
Yeah, I was just curious. I happened to play with, I think Monday, with someone that he didn't throw his cigarette butts on the golf course. He happened to be kind enough and put them in his Coca-Cola can. But it's just, I just wanted to know or refresh myself as to what the city policy was.
So that means there shouldn't be cigar smoking on the golf course?
That's correct.
Oh.
Why do you light them up every time you play?
No,
or
but
what?
I've seen them.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's
We can refresh you with the exact wording of the rules.
I'm still using a pipe.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go there.
Hey, Rick, this is Greg. Not a question,
Yes.
but a comment. I noticed, Perry, on the list of park signs, we now have officially a new park, huh? Dugan Plaza now is Dugan Park, so we could, not a large one, but we can add another one to the list, huh?
That's right. You can update your benchmarks.
That's right.
We already built that into the acreage though, Commissioner Good. So
Oh, yeah, it was already green space, wasn't it?
it was already green space. Yeah.
Yeah, but it
If you
counts
recall,
in our
that was-
parks. It counts as our in our parks per resident though now, so capture it in another benchmark.
If you recall, that was the parcel that had a lot of development controversy over, and the council last year indicated they wanted it incorporated into the park system. So we did that. And now, once the frost came out of the ground, Tom's staff installed park sign there.
Good.
Did you do upcoming meetings yet?
I'll get to that right now, Chair.
Okay.
Just a reminder, we've talked about it at length. Tuesday evening is your joint session with the council. We will have a June meeting that will most likely be virtual, and then July we shall see with the new guidance what's coming. I do have an internal staff meeting tomorrow to discuss the return of boards and commission meetings from virtual to in person. So as soon as I know more, I will update the commission. But that discussion has been taking place, and I'll be involved in a meeting tomorrow about that. I guess I would indicate individually, if you'd like to send me any concerns you may have about approaching in-person meetings, you could just send that to me individually, and we can base that into some of the discussion or decision making about what or if any concerns you might all have.
Any other questions or items for Perry or anybody else? Hearing none, I'll ask for the motion and second then for item number 7, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Janet, could you take roll, please?
Commissioner Haas,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Strother,
Aye.
Commissioner Willett,
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley,
Aye.
Commissioner Doskach,
Aye.
Commissioner Good,
Aye.
Commissioner Itis.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Yep, good night,
Thank
everybody.
you all. See you
Talk to
Tuesday.
you next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night.